The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete courtyard of Naval Base Coronado as Petty Officer Second Class Maria Santos pushed the wide broom in steady, methodical strokes. The bristles scraped against the rough surface, gathering sand and debris that the Pacific winds had blown in overnight. Around her, the base was already alive with activity. Sailors jogging in formation, vehicles moving supplies, and the distant sound of training exercises echoing from the obstacle courses. Maria had been sweeping these same quarters for 3 months now, ever since her transfer from the USS Nimitz to shore duty. The assignment wasn't what she had hoped for when she requested the transfer, but it beat being stuck in the ship's laundry room for another deployment. At least here, she could see the ocean and feel the California breeze on her face. She paused to wipe sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, her dark hair pulled back in regulation style beneath her utility cap. The base was busier than usual today, with extra security protocols in place. Word had gotten around that a special operations team was conducting training exercises, though the details were kept strictly classified. Maria had seen the black SUVs arriving earlier that morning, their tinted windows reflecting the morning light like mirrors. The sound of boots approaching made her look up from her work. A group of men in desert camouflage uniforms walked past, their conversation low and serious. She recognized the bearing immediately: Special Forces. These weren't regular Navy personnel. Their movements were different, more controlled, like predators comfortable in their environment. Each carried himself with the quiet confidence that came from surviving situations most people couldn't imagine. Maria continued sweeping, but her attention was divided. She had always been fascinated by special operations, ever since her older brother Miguel had tried out for Army Rangers 5 years ago. He hadn't made it through selection, but the stories he brought back had sparked something in her. The idea that there were people who pushed themselves beyond normal human limits, who volunteered for the missions nobody else wanted, had captured her imagination. Her assignment to shore duty hadn't been entirely voluntary. During her last deployment, Maria had gotten into what the Navy diplomatically called an altercation with a senior petty officer who had been making inappropriate comments to junior female sailors. The incident had been resolved quietly, but Maria knew it had put a mark on her record. Shore duty was supposed to be a cooling-off period, a chance for her to refocus her priorities, as her commanding officer had put it. What her commanding officer didn't know was that Maria had been using her shore duty time to train. Every morning before her shift, she ran the obstacle course that was normally reserved for SEAL candidates. Every evening after work, she spent hours in the base gym, pushing her body harder than she ever had during regular Navy PT. She wasn't training for anything specific. There was no program she could apply for, no opportunity she was preparing for. She just couldn't accept the idea that sweeping quarters was the pinnacle of her military career. The morning wore on, and Maria continued her assigned duties with the same attention to detail she brought to everything. She had learned long ago that excellence in small things was the foundation for excellence in bigger things. If she was going to sweep quarters, she was going to be the best quarter sweeper the Navy had ever seen. Around 10:30, she noticed increased activity near the restricted training area. More vehicles had arrived, and she could see personnel setting up what looked like simulation equipment. The base's normal rhythm had shifted to accommodate whatever exercise was taking place. Even the regular training schedules had been adjusted to keep other units away from the Special Operations area. Maria's supervisor, Chief Petty Officer Williams, appeared around the corner of the building, his coffee cup steaming in the cool air. Williams was a decent man, fair but by the book, who seemed genuinely sorry that Maria's talents were being wasted on maintenance duties. "Santos, you're making the rest of us look bad," he called out with a slight smile. "I've never seen quarters this clean." "Just doing my job, Chief," Maria replied, not pausing in her sweeping. Williams walked closer, lowering his voice. "Look, I know this isn't what you signed up for when you joined the Navy. Your record shows you were top of your class in weapons training, excellent marks in navigation and communications. This assignment won't last forever. Maria stopped sweeping and looked at him directly. I appreciate that, Chief, I really do. But I'm not here to count down days until I can transfer somewhere else. Whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do it right. The chief nodded approvingly. He had seen plenty of sailors who let temporary setbacks define their entire careers, who used difficult assignments as excuses to stop trying. Maria Santos wasn't one of them, and he respected that. As Williams walked away, Maria returned to her work, but her mind wandered to the restricted area where the Special Operations team was training. She wondered what they were preparing for, what skills they were honing that required such secrecy. The thought of being part of something that important, that challenging, made her push the broom a little harder. The base's PA system crackled to life with routine announcements, meal schedules, training updates, reminders about proper uniform regulations. Maria barely listened, having heard the same announcements dozens of times. But something in the background caught her attention. Through the fence that separated her work area from the Special Operations training ground, she could see movement. A group of operators was setting up what appeared to be a close-quarters combat simulation. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing exactly what needed to be done without verbal communication. Maria found herself slowing her sweeping to watch, fascinated by their coordination. One of the operators stood apart from the others, observing the setup with intense focus. Even at a distance, she could tell he was different from the rest. Where the others moved with confident precision, he moved with something approaching artistry. Every gesture was economical, purposeful. When he spoke, the others listened immediately, their body language showing the kind of respect that couldn't be manufactured by rank alone. Maria realized she had stopped sweeping entirely and was openly staring. She quickly returned to her work, hoping nobody had noticed her distraction. The last thing she needed was to be reported for being inattentive to her duties, especially with Special Operations personnel nearby. But as she swept, her peripheral vision remained focused on the training area. The team was running through what looked like room-clearing exercises, practicing movements that required split-second timing and absolute trust in each other. She could see why these units were considered elite. The level of skill and coordination they displayed was unlike anything she had witnessed in regular Navy training. The morning sun climbed higher, and the temperature began to rise. Maria's uniform was starting to stick to her back despite the ocean breeze. She had been assigned to clean the entire courtyard, a job that typically took most of the morning when done properly. She was making good time, but she forced herself not to rush. Chief Williams had been clear that thoroughness was more important than speed. Around 11:15, the Special Operations team took a break from their exercise. Maria watched as they gathered around a portable table where someone had spread out what looked like building plans or tactical diagrams. Their discussion was animated but quiet, with frequent pointing and gesture-based communication that suggested they were working through complex scenarios. The operator she had noticed earlier stepped back from the group and surveyed the training setup they had constructed. His gaze swept across the area methodically, taking in every detail with the kind of attention that came from years of operations where missing small things could have fatal consequences. His scan brought his eyes to the fence line where Maria was working. For a moment, their eyes met across the 30 yards of distance that separated them. Maria felt a flush of embarrassment at being caught watching, but she didn't look away immediately. Something in his expression suggested curiosity rather than annoyance. The operator said something to his team, then began walking toward the fence. Maria's heart rate increased as she realized he was approaching her position. She forced herself to continue sweeping, trying to appear focused on her work, while internally wondering if she was about to be reported for inappropriate behavior. He stopped about 10 feet from the fence, close enough to speak in a normal voice, but far enough to maintain proper protocol. When he spoke, his voice was calm and professional, with the slight rasp that came from years of giving orders in challenging environments. "That's some serious attention to detail," he said, nodding toward the immaculate courtyard Maria had been cleaning. Maria stopped sweeping and came to a respectful attention position. "Thank you, sir. Just trying to maintain standards." The operator studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Most people doing maintenance duty treat it like punishment, something to get through as quickly as possible. You're working like it matters." "Everything matters, sir," Maria replied without thinking, then immediately worried that she had sounded presumptuous. But the operator smiled slightly, the first change in his serious expression. "What's your background, sailor?" "Petty Officer Second Class Santos, sir. Previously stationed aboard USS Nimitz, weapons systems and navigation." "What brought you to shore duty?" Maria hesitated, unsure how much detail to provide. "Administrative reassignment, sir. Temporary duty while awaiting new orders." The operator nodded, reading between the lines with the skill of someone who had dealt with military bureaucracy for years. He didn't press for details, but his expression suggested he understood that good sailors sometimes ended up in positions that didn't reflect their actual capabilities. "How long have you been Navy?" he asked. 4 years, sir. Enlisted straight out of high school." "Family military?" "My brother attempted Army Ranger selection, sir. Didn't complete the program, but he shared some insights about special operations training." The operator's attention sharpened slightly at the mention of special operations. "What kind of insights?" Maria chose her words carefully, aware that she was having an unusual conversation with someone whose identity and mission she knew nothing about. "He said the biggest difference wasn't physical capability, sir, it was mental resilience. The willingness to keep performing when everything in your body and mind was telling you to quit." "Smart brother," the operator said. "Most people think special operations is about being stronger or faster than everyone else. Really, it's about being more stubborn." Maria found herself relaxing slightly, despite the unusual nature of the conversation. "That's essentially what he told me, sir. He said the people who made it through weren't necessarily the ones who started strongest. They were the ones who refused to accept failure as an option." The operator was quiet for a moment, studying Maria with renewed interest. Behind him, his team continued their planning session, occasionally glancing in their direction, but not interrupting. "Santos, you said?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "Where are you from originally?" "El Paso, Texas, sir. Grew up in a military family, though my father was Army rather than Navy." "What made you choose Navy over Army?" Maria had been asked this question many times during her enlistment process, but something about this conversation made her want to give a more honest answer than the standard response about serving her country and gaining valuable experience. "I wanted to see the world, sir, but more than that, I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. The Navy represented opportunity, to learn skills, to travel, to be part of missions that made a difference. I thought I could contribute something meaningful." The operator nodded slowly. "And now you're sweeping quarters?" "Yes, sir. But every assignment teaches you something, even if it's not what you expected to learn." "What has this assignment taught you?" Maria considered the question seriously. "Patience, sir. Attention to detail under boring circumstances. The discipline to maintain standards even when nobody's watching. And that there's dignity in any work done well." The operator studied her for a long moment, then glanced back at his team. They appeared to be wrapping up their planning session and preparing to resume training. "Santos," he said, turning back to her, "how's your physical fitness?" The question caught Maria off guard. "Above Navy standards, sir. I maintain personal training outside of required PT." "How far above standards?" Maria hesitated, unsure how to answer without sounding boastful. "Significantly above, sir. I run the obstacle course most mornings and spend considerable time in the gym. The obstacle course? The operator's eyebrows raised slightly. The SEAL candidate course? Yes, sir. I know I'm not authorized to use it during official training hours, but I go early enough that I don't interfere with authorized personnel. The operator was quiet for a moment, and Maria wondered if she had just admitted to violating base regulations. But when he spoke again, his tone suggested interest rather than disapproval. What kind of times are you running? I don't time myself officially, sir, but I estimate I'm completing the course in approximately 8 minutes. The operator's expression shifted to one of genuine surprise. 8 minutes was a respectable time for male SEAL candidates, and exceptional for anyone not in the special operations pipeline. You estimate? He asked. I focus more on form and completion than speed, sir. I'm more interested in building capability than setting records. Behind the operator, one of his team members called out that they were ready to resume training. The operator acknowledged with a quick hand signal, then turned back to Maria. Santos, my team is conducting training exercises this week. We're always looking for realistic simulation partners for some of our scenarios. Would you be interested in participating as an opposing force member? Maria's heart skipped. The opportunity to train with special operations personnel, even in a support role, was beyond anything she had imagined when she started her shift that morning. I would be honored, sir, but I would need authorization from my chain of command. That can be arranged. Report to Chief Williams that you've been requested for temporary additional duty supporting special operations training. The paperwork will be processed through proper channels. Yes, sir? When would this training take place? The operator glanced at his watch, then back at Maria. Finish your current assignment, then report to the training area at 1400 hours. Bring workout gear appropriate for physical exercise. Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. The operator started to walk away, then paused and looked back. Santos, one more thing. The scenarios we run are realistic and challenging. If you participate, you'll be expected to perform at the same level as everyone else involved. No allowances will be made based on your regular assignment or your gender. Are you comfortable with that? Maria stood straighter, feeling more energized than she had in months. Absolutely, sir. I wouldn't want it any other way. The operator smiled slightly. I thought you'd say that. See you at 1400. As he walked away, Maria returned to her sweeping with renewed energy. The routine task that had felt mundane minutes earlier now felt like preparation for something important. She had been given an opportunity that most sailors could only dream of, and she was determined to make the most of it. The morning sun continued its climb toward its zenith, but Maria barely noticed the increasing heat. Her mind was already racing ahead to the afternoon, wondering what kind of training she would be participating in and how she could best prepare herself for the challenge ahead. For the first time since her transfer to shore duty, Maria Santos felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Maria finished sweeping the quarters in record time, her movements efficient and purposeful despite the excitement building in her chest. She had never rushed through an assignment before, but today felt different. Every stroke of the broom brought her closer to 1400 hours and whatever challenge awaited her with the Special Operations Team. Chief Williams appeared just as she was storing the cleaning equipment in the maintenance shed. His expression was curious, with a hint of concern that suggested he had already received word about her temporary reassignment. Santos, I just got a call from someone very high up the food chain requesting your services for the afternoon, he said, studying her face for clues. You want to tell me what that's about? I'm not entirely sure, Chief. One of the Special Operations personnel asked if I'd be interested in participating in training exercises as an opposing force member. I told him I'd need authorization. Williams nodded slowly. Well, you've got it. Orders came down from the base commander himself. You're to report to Training Area 7 at 1400 hours with appropriate workout gear. He paused, then added, Santos, I don't know what you did to get their attention, but these aren't regular Navy personnel. They're SEALs, and they don't invite people to their exercises casually. Don't make me look bad. I won't, Chief. I promise. I know you won't. Now go get some chow and prepare yourself. And Santos? Good luck. Maria spent her lunch break in her quarters, changing into her physical training uniform and reviewing what she knew about special operations training methods. Her brother Miguel had shared stories about the psychological aspects of special forces selection, how instructors would create scenarios designed to test mental resilience as much as physical capability. She had no idea what to expect, but she was determined to approach whatever came next with the same professionalism she brought to everything else. At 13:45, she arrived at Training Area 7, carrying a small bag with extra gear and water. The area had been transformed since the morning. What had looked like simple room-clearing exercises now resembled a complex tactical environment with multiple structures, obstacles, and what appeared to be sophisticated monitoring equipment. The operator from that morning approached as she signed in with the duty officer. Up close, she could see the details that distance had obscured. The weathered hands that spoke of years handling weapons and equipment, the small scars that told stories she could only guess at, and most notably the calm confidence that came from surviving situations where confidence wasn't just helpful, it was essential for survival. Santos, glad you could make it, he said. I'm Petty Officer First Class Anderson, but for training purposes, call me instructor. This afternoon, we're running scenarios that require what we call asymmetric opposition, participants who can think independently and adapt to changing circumstances rather than following scripted responses. Maria nodded, understanding that she was being asked to be more than a target or obstacle. She was expected to actively challenge the team in ways that would make their training realistic and valuable. Yes, sir. What type of scenarios? Today, we're focused on close quarters navigation and threat assessment. You'll be positioned in various locations within our training structures, and your job is to present realistic challenges to team members as they move through the course. Sometimes you'll be hostile, sometimes neutral, sometimes friendly, but uncooperative. The key is to make decisions that a real person in those circumstances would actually make. Anderson led her toward a cluster of buildings that had been constructed to simulate an urban environment. The attention to detail was impressive: real doors and windows, multiple entry points, furniture and obstacles that created realistic interior spaces. It was clear that significant resources had been invested in making the training as authentic as possible. The team doesn't know where you'll be positioned or what your responses will be, Anderson continued. That uncertainty is crucial for realistic training. In actual operations, we encounter real people making real decisions based on their own motivations and perceptions. We need to be prepared for that unpredictability. They stopped at the entrance to the first building, where Anderson handed her a radio headset and what appeared to be a modified paintball weapon. Communication protocol is simple. You'll have a direct line to the exercise controller, who will provide you with scenario background and objectives. Your weapon fires marking rounds that register on the team's sensor equipment. Use your judgment about when engagement is appropriate, but remember that real people don't behave like video game characters. They hide, they run, they make mistakes, and they sometimes do things that don't make tactical sense. Maria examined the equipment, noting its quality and sophistication. This wasn't improvised training gear. It was professional simulation equipment that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. What's my background for the scenarios? That depends on the specific situation. But generally, you're a civilian in an environment where military personnel are conducting operations. You have your own motivations and concerns that may or may not align with what the team is trying to accomplish. The radio will give you specific context for each run. Anderson checked his watch, then looked back at Maria with an expression that seemed to be evaluating her readiness. Santos, before we start, I want to be clear about something. The team members participating in these exercises are some of the most highly trained personnel in the world. They're used to working with other operators who understand their methods and can predict their responses. You're going to be doing something completely different, and that might be frustrating for them at first. Don't let that discourage you. Your job is to be realistic, not to make their job easier. Understood, sir. Also, these scenarios can be physically and mentally demanding. If you're not comfortable with any situation, use the safe word pineapple and the exercise will stop immediately. No questions asked, no negative consequences. Clear? Clear, sir. Anderson led her into the first building and positioned her in what appeared to be a residential living room. The space was furnished with realistic detail, family photos on tables, books on shelves, even newspapers scattered around as if people had been living there recently. First scenario, Anderson's voice came through her headset. You're a mother of two whose neighborhood has become a conflict zone. You've been hiding in your house for 3 days, running low on food and water. You're scared, but you're also protective of your family. A team of military personnel is searching houses in your area, looking for enemy combatants. How you respond to them depends on how they approach you and treat you. Maria settled into character, drawing on her understanding of human psychology and her own protective instincts. She positioned herself near a window where she could observe approaches to the building while remaining mostly concealed. The exercise controller confirmed her position and announced that the scenario was beginning. Through the radio, she could hear the team's tactical communications as they approached the building. Their language was precise and professional, full of terminology and abbreviations that spoke to years of training and operational experience. She was impressed by their coordination. Even in training, they moved and communicated like people whose lives depended on working perfectly together. The front door opened slowly, and Maria heard the soft footsteps of someone entering carefully. A voice called out in clear, non-threatening tones. "Hello? Anyone here? We're U.S. Navy personnel conducting security sweeps. We're not here to hurt anyone." Maria made a decision based on her character's situation. A frightened mother would probably respond, but cautiously. She called out from her concealed position. "Who are you? Are you really military? How do I know you're not lying?" "Ma'am, my name is Petty Officer Johnson. I'm wearing a U.S. Navy uniform, and I can show you my identification. We're here to help ensure the area is safe. Can you tell me if you've seen any armed individuals in the neighborhood?" Maria appreciated the professional tone, but her character would still be suspicious. "I've been hiding for 3 days. I don't know who's safe anymore. My children are hungry and scared. Can you help us? Or are you just going to search my house and leave?" There was a pause in the communications, and Maria could sense the team member thinking through his response. This was probably not the kind of interaction they typically trained for. Most exercises likely focused on clearly hostile or clearly friendly encounters, not the ambiguous middle ground where real people actually lived. "Ma'am, we can provide you with information about safe areas where food and medical assistance are available. But first, I need to confirm that there are no threats in this building. Can you come out where I can see you slowly with your hands visible?" Maria considered her character's likely response. A protective mother might comply, but would probably try to maintain some control over the situation. She emerged from her concealment slowly, hands raised but not empty. She carried one of the family photos, a detail that might make her seem more human and less like a training prop. "This is my family," she said, holding up the photo. "My husband is deployed overseas and I'm here alone with my kids. I'll cooperate, but I need to know that you're really here to help people, not just to complete a mission." The SEAL team member she was facing was young, probably not much older than she was, but he carried himself with the quiet competence she was learning to recognize in special operations personnel. His response showed that he understood the human element of what they were practicing. "Ma'am, I understand your concern. Our mission includes ensuring the safety of civilians like yourself. If you can help us confirm that this building is secure, we can provide you with current information about safe zones and assistance programs. The scenario continued for several more minutes, with Maria responding as realistically as possible to the team's questions and procedures. She provided some helpful information, withheld some details that her character would reasonably keep private, and asked questions that a real person in that situation would want answered. When the exercise concluded, Anderson's voice came through the radio. "Excellent work, Santos. Reset for Scenario 2. The second scenario placed her in the role of a nervous shopkeeper who had been forced to provide supplies to hostile forces but was afraid to admit it to friendly troops. This situation required a different kind of performance, someone who wanted to help but was constrained by fear and conflicting loyalties. The team handled this scenario differently, with one member engaging her in conversation while others searched the building. Maria found herself impressed by their ability to adapt their approach based on the situation they encountered. When she finally admitted to providing supplies under duress, they responded with understanding rather than suspicion, demonstrating the kind of cultural sensitivity that distinguished elite units from ordinary military personnel. The third scenario was the most challenging. Maria was positioned as a seemingly friendly local who was actually gathering intelligence for hostile forces. This required her to be helpful and cooperative, while subtly trying to extract information about the team's capabilities and intentions. This scenario tested both her acting ability and her understanding of military operations. She needed to ask questions that seemed innocent, but would actually provide valuable intelligence, while being careful not to make her interest too obvious. The team member engaging with her was clearly experienced in dealing with this type of threat. He provided friendly responses that revealed nothing useful while gathering his own information about her knowledge and motivations. The exercise revealed the depth of training and preparation that special operations personnel brought to their work. Every interaction was evaluated through multiple lenses: immediate tactical considerations, broader strategic implications, and long-term consequences. They were trained to think several steps ahead while maintaining focus on immediate objectives. After the third scenario, Anderson called for a break. Maria joined the team in a debriefing area where they discussed the exercises with the same analytical approach they probably applied to actual operations. "Santos, your performance was outstanding," Anderson began. "You brought genuine unpredictability to the scenarios without being unrealistic." "That's exactly what we need for effective training." One of the younger team members spoke up. "The intel gathering scenario was particularly good. Most people either overplay the deception or underplay it. You found the right balance. Suspicious enough to be challenging, but believable enough to be realistic." Maria felt a flush of pride at the professional recognition, but she tried to maintain appropriate humility. "Thank you. I tried to think about how real people in those situations would actually behave, not how they behave in movies." "That's the key insight," Anderson said. "Most training scenarios are based on predictable responses that make the exercise easier to control. Real operations are messier, more complicated. People have mixed motivations, incomplete information, and emotional responses that don't always make tactical sense." The debriefing continued with detailed analysis of each scenario. The team discussed what had worked well, what could be improved, and how the experiences might apply to actual operational situations. Maria was struck by their intellectual approach to what many people probably thought of as purely physical work. These weren't just highly trained athletes. They were tactical analysts who could evaluate complex situations and adapt their responses in real time. As the formal debriefing concluded, Anderson approached Maria privately. "Santos, I'd like to discuss something with you. The team was impressed with your performance today, but more than that, they were impressed with your approach. You demonstrated the kind of analytical thinking and adaptive capability that we value highly in special operations. Maria listened carefully, unsure where the conversation was heading. I know your current assignment is temporary, and I assume you'll eventually be rotating to another position within the regular Navy. But I want you to know that there are opportunities within special operations for personnel with your capabilities, even if they don't follow traditional pathways. Sir, I appreciate that, but I'm not sure what opportunities would be available to someone with my background and current situation. Anderson smiled. That's what I want to talk to you about tomorrow. There are programs and positions that most people don't know about. Roles that require exactly the kind of skills you demonstrated today. Would you be interested in learning more? Maria felt her heart rate increase. The possibility of being involved in special operations work, even in a support role, was beyond anything she had imagined when she started sweeping quarters that morning. Yes, sir. I would be very interested. Good. Report back here tomorrow at the same time. We'll run some additional scenarios, and then we'll have a more detailed conversation about potential opportunities. As Maria gathered her equipment and prepared to return to her regular duties, she reflected on the day's events. Hours earlier, she had been cleaning quarters and wondering if her military career would ever amount to anything meaningful. Now she was being considered for opportunities that could change the entire direction of her service. The sun was setting over the Pacific as she walked back toward the main base, casting long shadows across the same courtyard she had been sweeping that morning. Everything looked the same, but she felt fundamentally different. For the first time since her transfer to shore duty, Maria Santos felt like she was moving toward something important, rather than just serving out time until her next assignment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. Tonight, she would prepare for whatever came next, with the same dedication she brought to everything else. She had been given a chance to prove herself, and she intended to make the most of it. Maria arrived at Training Area 7 15 minutes early the next day, her mind sharp and her body ready for whatever challenge Anderson had planned. She had spent the previous evening researching special operations support roles, trying to understand what opportunities might exist for someone with her background and current status. The training area looked different than it had the day before. New structures had been added, and the existing buildings showed signs of modification. Whatever they were preparing for today was more complex than the previous day's scenarios. Anderson greeted her with the same professional demeanor, but she noticed additional personnel present, people she hadn't seen before, including a woman in civilian clothes who carried herself with unmistakable military bearing despite her non-uniform attire. Santos, today we're running something different, Anderson began. Yesterday demonstrated that you can handle individual scenario-based training effectively. Today, we want to test your ability to adapt under sustained pressure and complex evolving circumstances. He led her to a briefing area where aerial photos and building layouts were displayed on multiple screens. The level of detail was impressive. These weren't simple training diagrams, but comprehensive intelligence packages that looked like preparation for actual operations. Today's exercise simulates a prolonged urban environment where you'll face multiple sequential challenges without reset periods between scenarios. You'll need to maintain character consistency while adapting to changing circumstances, new information, and evolving threats. The woman in civilian clothes stepped forward. Santos, I'm Sarah Chen, and I'll be your exercise controller today. Unlike yesterday, you'll be receiving real-time updates and changing objectives throughout the exercise. Your ability to process new information and modify your responses accordingly is what we're evaluating. Maria nodded, understanding that today would test cognitive flexibility under pressure as much as her performance skills. Your base character is a former military communications specialist who left the service and now works as a translator and cultural advisor in conflict zones, Chen continued. You have military training but no current allegiance to U.S. forces. Your motivations are complex. You want to survive, you're trying to protect local civilians, and you have information that could be valuable to multiple parties. The scenario background was more sophisticated than anything from the previous day. Maria would need to maintain multiple layers of character motivation while responding to unpredictable situations and new information. The team doesn't know your background or objectives, Anderson added. They'll discover information about your character through their interactions with you, just as they would in real operations. Your job is to be consistent with your character's background while responding naturally to whatever they do. Maria was fitted with more sophisticated monitoring equipment than the previous day, including sensors that would track her stress responses and decision-making patterns under pressure. The level of technology involved suggested this wasn't just training, it was research into human performance under complex circumstances. One more thing, Chen said. Today's exercise will run for approximately 4 hours with minimal breaks. You'll face sustained pressure, confusing information, and situations where there may not be clear right answers. The team will be evaluating your responses, but will also be studying how well you maintain performance over extended periods. Maria was positioned in a multi-story building that simulated a war-torn urban environment. The attention to detail was remarkable. Broken furniture, scattered personal belongings, signs of recent conflict, and audio effects that created the background sounds of a dangerous area. Her initial instructions came through the earpiece. You've been trapped in this building for 6 hours after a firefight in the area. You have information about the location of several injured civilians, but you're not sure whether the military personnel you might encounter are friendly or hostile. Your primary goal is survival, but you also feel responsible for the civilians you know about. The exercise began with distant sounds of vehicles and radio chatter. Maria positioned herself where she could observe the building's approaches while maintaining the nervous alertness of someone who had been hiding under dangerous circumstances for hours. The first contact came sooner than expected. Instead of a careful approach like the previous day, she heard the rapid movement of multiple personnel entering the building simultaneously. This was a dynamic entry, the kind used when speed was more important than stealth. "Building secured, proceeding with search," came a voice from the lower floor. Maria made character-appropriate noise, the sound of someone trying to hide but not entirely successfully. Within minutes, she heard footsteps approaching her position. "Contact. Second floor," a team member reported. "Investigating." When the SEAL appeared in her doorway, Maria responded as her character would, with fear but not panic, suspicious but not hostile. "Please don't shoot," she said, raising her hands but remaining in a defensive posture. "I'm not armed, I'm just trying to stay alive." The team member's response was professional but urgent. "Ma'am, identify yourself. What are you doing here?" "I work as a translator. I was in the area when the fighting started and got trapped. I've been hiding here since this morning." The SEAL studied her carefully, his weapon ready but not directly threatening. "Are you injured? Are there other civilians in the building?" Maria's character would have useful information, but would be hesitant to share it without assurance of safety. "I'm not hurt, but I know about others who are injured." "How do I know you're here to help and not just looking for targets?" This began a complex negotiation where Maria had to balance her character's legitimate fears with the team's need for information. The SEAL demonstrated impressive patience and cultural awareness, gradually building trust while gathering intelligence about the tactical situation. 20 minutes into the first contact, Chen's voice came through the earpiece with updated instructions. "New information. You've just recognized one of the team members as someone who was present during a civilian casualty incident 2 weeks ago. You're not sure of his involvement, but you're now suspicious of the entire team." This completely changed the dynamic of the interaction. Maria had to shift her character's responses while maintaining believability, becoming more guarded and evasive without making the change so obvious that it seemed artificial. The team adapted to her changed behavior with impressive skill, recognizing that something had shifted without understanding why. Their response showed the kind of cultural sensitivity that distinguished elite units. They didn't pressure her aggressively when she became less cooperative, but instead modified their approach to rebuild trust. The scenario continued to evolve. Maria was moved to different locations within the building complex, faced new team members with different personality types and tactical approaches, and received regular updates that changed her character's motivations and knowledge. 2 hours into the exercise, she received perhaps the most challenging update. Intelligence indicates that the injured civilians you know about include a high-value target that multiple factions are looking for. You're not sure which faction this team represents, and providing the information could either save the civilians or put them in greater danger. This created a moral dilemma that had no clear resolution. Maria's character wanted to help the injured people, but couldn't be certain whether cooperating with the team would actually accomplish that goal. She had to portray someone wrestling with incomplete information and conflicting ethical obligations. The team's handling of this complex situation was remarkable. When Maria became evasive about the civilian locations, they didn't pressure her aggressively or try to intimidate her into compliance. Instead, they worked to understand her concerns and address them honestly. "Ma'am, I understand your hesitation," one team member said. "You don't know us, and you've seen what happens when people choose the wrong side in conflicts like this. What would it take for you to feel confident that helping us would actually help the civilians you're concerned about?" This approach forced Maria to engage with the fundamental trust-building challenge that special operations personnel faced in real environments. Her character's response had to be realistic. What would actually convince a suspicious civilian to cooperate with military personnel in a dangerous, ambiguous situation? The exercise continued with sustained intensity. Maria faced interrogation scenarios, evacuation simulations, and complex negotiations that required her to balance multiple competing interests. Each situation tested different aspects of her performance while maintaining the overall character consistency. 3.5 hours into the exercise, she received her final update. "The building is about to come under attack from hostile forces. The team needs to evacuate immediately, but the injured civilians you know about can't be moved without assistance. You have to decide whether to reveal their location, potentially exposing them to danger, or let the team leave without the information, knowing that the civilians may not survive without help." This ultimate moral crisis required Maria to make a character decision under extreme time pressure. The team's urgency was genuine. She could hear simulated incoming fire and see their preparation for immediate departure. Maria made her choice based on her character's ultimate motivations. The protection of innocent people outweighed her personal safety concerns. "The civilians are in the basement of the building 2 blocks north," she said quickly. "There are 4 injured people, including a child. They've been hiding there since yesterday and won't have access to food or medical care." The team's response showed why they were considered elite. Instead of simply thanking her and leaving, they immediately began planning how to incorporate civilian evacuation into their departure strategy. Their concern for non-combatant safety was clearly genuine, not just a tactical consideration. As the exercise concluded, Maria felt both exhausted and exhilarated. The sustained pressure and complex decision-making had pushed her mental and emotional resources to their limits, but she had maintained character consistency and realistic responses throughout. In the debriefing session, the evaluation was comprehensive and detailed. Chen presented analysis of her stress responses, decision-making patterns, and adaptation strategies over the extended exercise period. "Santos, your performance today was exceptional," Chen began. You maintained character consistency under sustained pressure while adapting to rapidly changing circumstances. Most importantly, you demonstrated the kind of complex thinking and ethical reasoning that we require in special operations support personnel. Anderson added, "The team reported that your responses felt genuine throughout the exercise. You never broke character, even when facing moral dilemmas that had no clear answers. That's exactly the kind of authentic human behavior that makes training valuable." One of the team members, who had participated in the exercise, spoke up. "Working with Santos felt like working with a real person in a real situation. Most training partners either make things too easy by being obviously cooperative or too hard by being unrealistically hostile. She found the right balance, challenging but believable." After the team debriefing concluded, Anderson and Chen asked Maria to remain for a private conversation. "Santos, we've been discussing potential opportunities that might interest you," Anderson began. "Based on your performance over the past 2 days, we believe you have capabilities that could be valuable in specialized roles within the special operations community." Chen opened a folder containing documents that Maria couldn't see clearly. "There are positions within special operations that require personnel who can interact authentically with civilian populations in complex environments. These roles require cultural sensitivity, psychological resilience, and the ability to maintain performance under sustained pressure. All qualities you've demonstrated." Maria felt her heart racing as she realized where the conversation was heading. "The positions I'm referring to are part of specialized support units that work directly with SEAL teams and other special operations forces," Chen continued. "They require additional training, security clearances, and a commitment to excellence that goes beyond normal military standards. But they also offer opportunities to participate in missions that make real differences in critical situations." Anderson leaned forward. "Santos, we're prepared to recommend you for the Cultural Support Team Pipeline. It's a program that trains selected personnel to serve as liaisons between special operations forces and civilian populations in sensitive environments. It's challenging, selective, and requires a level of commitment that not everyone can maintain." Maria listened carefully, understanding that this was the opportunity she had hoped for, but never dared to expect. "The training pipeline is approximately 8 months, Chen explained. It includes cultural studies, advanced language training, psychological preparation, and extensive field exercises. Successful completion leads to assignment with active special operations units conducting real-world missions. But before you decide," Anderson added, "you need to understand what you'd be giving up. This isn't a traditional Navy career path. The work is demanding, often dangerous, and requires personal sacrifices that most people aren't willing to make. You'd be leaving behind the predictability and safety of regular military assignments for something that could be more fulfilling but is definitely more challenging." Maria thought about the question for several long moments. 2 days earlier, she had been sweeping quarters and wondering if her military career would ever amount to anything meaningful. Now she was being offered the opportunity to become part of the most elite military community in the world. "Sir, ma'am, I'm interested," she said finally. "I understand the risks and the demands. I also understand that this is an opportunity to contribute to something larger and more important than anything I could accomplish in a regular assignment. I'm ready for the challenge." Chen smiled. "I thought you'd say that. The formal application process will take several weeks, and there are additional evaluations you'll need to complete. But based on what we've observed, I'm confident you'll be accepted into the program." Anderson stood and extended his hand. "Santos, congratulations. You've earned this opportunity through demonstrated performance, not just potential. The training will be demanding, but I believe you have what it takes to succeed." As Maria left the training area that evening, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. 2 days of pushing herself had opened doors she hadn't even known existed. Her commitment to excellence in small things had prepared her for excellence in bigger things. The sun was setting over the Pacific again, casting the same long shadows across the base that she had seen the previous evening. But everything had changed. Tomorrow she would begin the process of becoming something she had never imagined possible. Maria Santos had started the week sweeping quarters. She was ending it with an invitation to join the most elite community in the military. The journey ahead would be challenging, but she had already proven to herself and others that she was ready for whatever came next. Her brother Miguel had been right about special operations. It wasn't about being stronger or faster than everyone else. It was about being more stubborn, more committed, more willing to excel under pressure. Maria had those qualities in abundance, and now she would have the chance to use them in service of missions that truly mattered. As she walked back to her quarters to begin preparing for the next phase of her career, Maria Santos felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The simple task of sweeping quarters had led to extraordinary opportunities, proving once again that excellence in any assignment, no matter how mundane, could open doors to exceptional possibilities.